You know, one of the best parts about living in a 55 plus active adult community is the people. And one of the hardest parts about living in a 55 plus active adult community is the people. Living in a 55 plus community can be one of the best experiences you will ever have. You gain friends, activities, security, and a real sense of belonging. But wherever people live together, you'll always run into a few personalities that can be a little challenging. Now, these personalities aren't new. You probably ran into these same personalities when you were working. But hopefully, that experience gave you the skills and the patience to deal with them once you're retired. Welcome back, friends. And if you're new here and you want to be my friend, just hit subscribe and we'll be friends. Hi, I'm Rose, and this is my channel where I talk about everything having to do with retirement. And I really want to thank you for tuning in. Today, we're talking about 3 personality traits that can make community life a little more stressful. Now, this is not to criticize anyone, but just to give you some advice on recognizing these behaviors early on and knowing how to respond without creating unnecessary conflict. And these aren't unique to retirees. You'll find these in every age group, in every environment. But living in a close community can make them more noticeable. And I just want to say as a disclaimer, this isn't about labeling anybody. Everybody can have bad days or off days. What I'm discussing here is more of reoccurring patterns of personalities. Let's start with the one that causes the most drama, and that is the gossip. Now, this is the personality that knows everyone's business, and they want to share that business with everyone they come into contact with. They love rumors, and they love spreading rumors. And often that conversation begins with, "Oh, I shouldn't be telling you this," or "Don't tell anybody I told you this." But why it's harmful? It can create unnecessary tension. It definitely damages trust. It can turn neighbors and friends against each other. And of course, it makes the community feel more divided. Now, how do you deal with that personality? First of all, don't show any interest. You can change the subject politely and never provide any personal information that you don't want spread around. And keep the conversation friendly but superficial. Now, an example of that would be to say, "I haven't heard about that. I hope everything works out for them." And then move on. The key takeaway is you don't have to be rude, but don't become part of the rumor chain. So number 2 is the constant complainer. That's the person that the minute you greet them, they start laying into issues with the HOA, with the weather, with the board of directors, landscaping, prices, gas prices, other residents. Nothing is ever quite right. There's always something to complain about on every subject. Now, why it's harmful? Negativity spreads. After enough exposure to this kind of person, you yourself might be feeling more anxious. Even if your day started out well, that could put you in a different direction. Now, how do you deal with that type of personality? So I like to listen briefly, acknowledge their feelings, don't match their negativity, don't feed into the conversation. Maybe redirect them towards some solutions. I always had a boss that every time somebody would come in and complain, including myself, she would look at us and say, "And the solution is?" And it would always stop us dead in our track. We just stopped complaining. And I always found that was really a good way to stop that. Now, it doesn't always work in every situation. There are some people that just like to complain, and sometimes they don't know how to communicate, and that's the only way they know how to communicate is to complain. Now, one of the ways you can address it is to say, "That does sound frustrating. I hope it gets resolved soon." One of the key takeaways is you can be compassionate without taking on their negativity. Now, the third trait is the one-upper. Now, we all know somebody like that. I actually have somebody in my family that's like that. And this is the person that every conversation turns into a competition. Whatever you've done, they've done it bigger, better, and more often. They constantly redirect the spotlight to them. They struggle to celebrate someone else's success without redirecting it to a bigger accomplishment of their own. Now, an example of that is you took a vacation somewhere and you're sharing that destination with someone, and they jump in and they've been there 12 times and they've had a better experience than you, and they just hijacked your conversation. Now, why does this matter? Because most conversations aren't a competition. When someone tries to top every story, it leaves people feeling like they haven't been heard or they're not important. Over time, it can really make a social interaction exhausting. Now, sometimes that behavior comes from insecurity or a desire to feel important, and other times it's just a habit they're in. Whatever the reason, it can affect genuine relationships from forming. Now, how do you deal with them? Don't let it turn into a contest. Let them share their story without trying to win the conversation. Acknowledge what they said and then kind of transition back into what you were saying. And most importantly, because I've seen this happen, when they do it to someone else that you're in a conversation with, try to redirect the conversation back to that person who originally started it so that they know that you know what happened and that you hear them and you want them to finish their story. Now, that doesn't mean you have to accept that behavior. It's worth remembering that difficult behavior sometimes reflects what's happening beneath the surface. It could be loneliness or grief or health issues or major life transitions. Now, that doesn't mean it should be acceptable, but responding with kindness and healthy boundaries can often lead to better outcomes. So instead of focusing on difficult personalities, look for people who are kind, curious, respectful, reliable, positive without being fake. Look for people who are good listeners. And most importantly, for those who are comfortable disagreeing respectfully. I also look for people that try to include other people around you. If you notice somebody that is kind of standing off by themselves, they may be going through some things as well. Draw them into the conversation. And if you're with one of these personalities that you're having a hard time dealing with, you can bring other people into the conversation and then slowly transition away from those people. Because most importantly, what happens inside of you is what you need to focus on. I, as an introvert, don't want to go to a party where somebody's making me anxious inside. I tend to bring other people into the conversation so I can kind of transition away from the people that make me anxious. And we do have a friend who, when she's in our social interactions, I know she struggles with loneliness. So she tries to interject into every conversation, sometimes cutting people off. And it can be seen as being rude, and it could be seen as one of the people that are trying to one-up you. I don't think that's her intentions. And I know her heart, so I'm not going to say that that's what she's doing intentionally. It turns out that that's what it looks like, especially to people that are new to the group and don't really know her that well. But I try to see what's underneath that person and try to interject in a kind, respectful way, redirect the conversation so that she doesn't feel like we're slighting her. But also I have been known to bring other people into the conversation and kind of move away from her so she can talk to somebody else. There's nothing wrong with that. There's all kinds of different people out there. And I'm sure I'm not the most pleasant person all the time. All you can do is try to be the best person you can be. So anyways, if you've come across these kind of people, maybe leave a comment. Just remember, no community is perfect. Not everyone is perfect. Not everyone is kind. I like to think that people that come across with bad behavior, personality traits, that there's a reason for it, but it doesn't mean that we have to put up with it, let's say. But there are ways to interact with these people and not bring yourself into an anxious position. But it's important to learn to recognize challenging behaviors and know how to deal with them. So please leave a comment about any behaviors, personalities that you've come across that you've had trouble dealing with or how you've dealt with them. I'd really like to hear about that. So if you could leave a comment, that would be awesome. If you could subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. Trying to build up my channel here. And also, if you'd like and share this video, I'd appreciate that as well. So I really look forward to seeing you real soon.